You stay here.
A woman who opens her eyes wide with a bright red lip and shouts loudly. I suddenly felt uneasy and asked them questions desperately, hoping that I could get rid of this feeling.
Where is here? Did we come to visit this house? Will Mom and Dad come with me?
However, the woman just looks down at me angrily and glares.
Shut up.
And then, as if hiding in the shadows, a man with expressionless, pitch-black eyes looks at me. These unemotional two are my parents. The parents who abandoned me 30 years ago, when I was just 6 years old. I was suddenly taken to an unknown house in an unknown place on that day. Just minutes before, I was elated about my first outing with my parents. When I rang the doorbell, my mom turned her back as if to flee and headed towards the car. I'm being left behind, I realized instantly and clung desperately to my mom's arm.
Wait. I'm coming with you.
But she shook me off as if I were something dirty. My mom did not even glance at me as I struggled, unable to stand up on the road, and she got into the car and drove away. The smell of the car's exhaust gas intensely stung my nose. Trying to stand up to chase the car, it was difficult even to get up, as I was born with only one leg. While I struggled to stand, the car quickly disappeared from my sight. With my arms and legs shaking with fear, I couldn't move. Breathing is difficult, and I feel suffocated. I want to go home. Where am I? This is my last memory with my parents when I was 6 years old. 30 years have passed since then, and I haven't seen my parents. I don't intend to see them. Now, protecting this life is my top priority. I can do anything to protect our family's peaceful life, and I will be happy enough to forget about that day. My name is Clara. I was born without a right leg, but I've managed to live happily for 36 years. I've been able to work in a job I love, and my days are very fulfilling. All of this is thanks to my grandpa. I don't feel thankful to my parents at all, because they abandoned me. My mom, who called me a monster. I don't remember much from my childhood, but one memory that sometimes surfaces is the sight of my mom's back. Inside our house, perhaps in a dimly lit room by the window, with bright red curtains slightly swaying in the breeze, I was collapsed on the floor. Thirsty, I had tried to go to the faucet to drink some water and lost my balance and fell. As I collapsed, my cane rolled away. Back then, I still couldn't attach my prosthetic leg by myself, so when at home, I moved around balancing with a cane. With not much strength in my arms yet, I couldn't stand up and wanted to reach for my cane, so I called out to my mom for help. However, she turned her back and didn't even look at my outstretched hand, desperately seeking help. It was unbearable for my mom that her daughter wasn't like other children. At the time, I thought it was my fault that I wasn't loved. My dad was hardly ever at home, so my memories of him are even less than those of my mom. Sometimes, when he was home, he acted as if I were invisible. Even if I was struggling to go up the stairs or reach the faucet, he would just walk past me or sit watching TV in the living room. He was indifferent to me, and when I drew a picture of him and said, "Look, I drew Daddy," he would just respond, "Okay." When I asked him, "Let's eat together," he just said, "Okay." It was always just okay. I have no memory of making eye contact. In my memories, my dad's eyes are always pitch black. I think the indifference of my dad like that must have influenced my mom's feelings towards me as well. Under such indifferent parents, as I was ignored outright and with elementary school on the horizon, one day my mom said,
Clara, we're going out today.
I hadn't attended kindergarten or daycare, and outings were minimal, so the three of us had never gone out together.
We're going far, so take this.
My mom handed me a bag with a few clothes in it. Until then, my mom didn't even take me to the park because she was worried about my appearance. So when I was told we were going out, my heart was racing and I was excited about where we were going.
Where are we going?
I asked, but my parents didn't answer. However, I was so absorbed in the changing scenery outside the car window that I didn't mind. From the back seat, I couldn't see my parents' faces, but I remember the unkempt beard on my dad's chin visible through the rearview mirror. I don't know how long we drove, but eventually the car stopped.
Time to get out.
When the door opened and I got out, there was an old house.
Goodbye.
Suddenly feeling anxious, I rapidly asked her,
Isn't Mom coming with me? Dad, where are we? Are Mom and Dad going somewhere?
but as usual, my dad avoided my gaze.
Everything has been arranged.
That's all she said. When I rang the doorbell of the house, my parents got into the car and left before the person inside could come out, leaving me behind. I stood there dumbfounded, watching my parents' car drive away, unable to comprehend what was happening to me. Where is this place? Whose house is this? Why was I brought here? Overwhelmed by anxiety, fear, and a sense of loss, I couldn't even think when I heard the click of the front door opening.
Well, hello. Who might this be?
The face that appeared was familiar. It was my grandpa. Since my mom was concerned about how I looked, we never visited this house, but I remembered my grandparents because they used to come to my home to visit. It was the first time I felt the warmth of another person, as the kindness I received from my grandparents back then was so impactful. I vividly remember feeling that there was someone who cherished me so dearly.
Clara, what's wrong? Where are your mom and dad?
The moment I heard my grandpa's voice, I couldn't stop the tears. Sensing something, he gently embraced me. With the warmth of his hands, I was finally able to express my feelings.
Mom, she drove off somewhere in the car. I want to go home. It hurts.
Then my sad-looking grandpa hugged me tightly and stroked my head.
Clara, it's still cold outside. Let's go inside.
He gently took my hand and invited me into the house. The warmth emanating from my grandpa's large hands at that moment is something I haven't forgotten to this day. It's okay, my grandpa said, as if reassuring himself as well. My grandpa offered me a warm drink. I remember feeling my core warm up and the tension in my whole body gradually easing away. "Is this all your luggage?" he asked, which made me wonder briefly if I couldn't go home. However, in the warmth of the house and the gentle voices of my grandparents, I gradually calmed down, and I fell asleep between them stroking my forehead, sleeping well into the next day. From that day on, I began living with my grandparents. A few days later, I overheard my grandpa talking on the phone.
Are you still her mother after all?
His unusually raised voice startled me. After hanging up, he said to my grandma, if Clara knew she was abandoned by her parents, she'd be so sad. Hearing the sadness in his voice, I quietly went into the room they had prepared for me. Although I had suspected it, it was then that I truly realized I had been abandoned by my parents. From then on, wrapped in the kindness of my grandparents, I gradually began to forget the sadness of being abandoned. Warm meals, kind words, and a warm room made me feel truly happy for the first time. My grandparents cherished me deeply and even supported me through college. They attended every school event, proudly watching me strive and enjoy myself with kind smiles as if it were their own joy. High school and college were a bit far from my grandparents' home, and although they were over 60, whenever I said, "You don't have to push yourselves," they always insisted, "We want to see Clara. We want to be there." To me, they were like my real parents. I don't have parents other than my grandparents who love me more than anyone else. I owe them a debt of gratitude that I can never fully repay. I had always decided that I would repay them when I grew up. After graduating from college and receiving my first paycheck, I prepared a dinner and a gift for them. "This is such a fancy restaurant. I've never been here before," they said with a shy smile, which brought tears of joy to my eyes. I toasted with my grandpa.
"I'm so happy to be able to drink with Clara,"
he said with flushed cheeks. "Thank you for putting me through college. I was never lonely because Grandma and Grandpa were always there, and I was so happy you came to all the events."
"Your smile is our source of energy. We did it because we love to,"
my grandpa said, waving his hands in front of his face in embarrassment. At that moment, it seemed like my grandpa's eyes were a little teary. I handed them 2 teacups I had prepared as a gift.
"It's too precious to use, knowing Clara bought it with the money she worked so hard for."
With a smile on my face, I held the teacups in my hands and continued to gaze at it. 30 years have passed since my parents abandoned me. In other words, it's been 30 years since I started living with my grandparents and became a family of 3. Since becoming a working adult, I have worked hard to give back to my grandparents. Even if I cut down on sleep and had no free time, I didn't naturally feel the hardship as long as I was working toward my goals. In my 20s and 30s, I devoted myself to work. I took on any job that paid well. Instead of spending on personal leisure, I saved money. Finally, this year, I managed to buy a high-rise apartment close to a convenience station that made life easier for my elderly grandparents. They seem satisfied with life in the high-rise, and we've been able to lead a peaceful daily life. One day, as I was thinking about what would make my grandparents happy next, something unexpected happened. One holiday morning, while drinking coffee with my grandparents in the living room, the doorbell rang. The monitor showed a middle-aged couple. I had no idea who they were, but Grandpa peeked over and showed clear anger.
"What are they doing here now?"
Hearing Grandpa's voice, I looked at the monitor again. Those eyes, I remembered them. Always turning their backs on me, but when angry, my mom with wide eyes glaring and my FDA'd with dark eyes.
"Go away. We have nothing to talk about with you."
My grandpa ended the intercom call. He went into his room, but the parents shown on the monitor didn't seem to be leaving. Beep, beep, beep. The doorbell rang over and over, and suspicious eyes of other residents appeared on the monitor. Thinking it would bother the other residents, I decided to handle it myself. "We have nothing to discuss, so please leave." Despite my firm statement, my mom wouldn't back down. She stared intently at the monitor. Her large red mouth seemed almost capable of swallowing someone whole. Beside her, my dad, shadow-like with his pitch-black eyes, muttered something inaudible.
I won't leave until we talk. Let me into the house.
My mom yelled without regard for the onlookers at the entrance. Anyway, we have nothing to discuss. As I tried to refuse, my mom eagerly interrupted.
Seriously, if you've moved into such a condo, you should have told us. If I hadn't heard from Uncle George, I wouldn't even know where your family home was.
Her tone was familiar. It was always complaining. Uncle George was my grandma's little brother. Since my grandma had only one sibling, she had given him our new address in case of emergencies. I hadn't detailed to Uncle George that I had been abandoned by my parents because he lived near my parents' home. It was out of consideration to ensure that no harm came to Uncle George because of sharing our situation.
I had to pretend to be his niece to get the information from Uncle George over the phone. He didn't realize it was me because he's seriously hard of hearing, and he blabbed on about how happy you are living in such a nice place.
Laughing as she spoke, my mom seemed to have lost any normal human sensibility, finding humor in her deceitful antics.
If you're earning enough to live in such a place, you should provide some money for us.
She demanded of me as she should have. I will not give you any money. At that, my mom's expression darkened.
What did you just say? Who do you think raised you?
She was furious. The ones who raised me were Grandpa and Grandma.
You ungrateful bastard.
She berated me.
Do you have any idea how hard it was to raise someone like you? You need to pay back the money it took to raise you until you grew up. It's only natural to repay your parents.
As she pressed on, I responded, I have no memory of being raised by you. My real parents are my grandparents. I refused her demand for money. Still unwilling to back down, she continued to shout through the intercom, prompting my grandpa to come out from the back room.
What is all this noise about? I told you to leave.
He shouted at my mom.
We raised this child, so we have taught her to repay her debts to us.
The usually calm face of my grandpa was now filled with an anger I had never seen before.
You raised her. Have you forgotten what you did to this girl 30 years ago? You abandoned her in an unknown place when she was just a little girl. Did you ever think about how she felt then? When I held Clara, she was trembling. Can you imagine how lonely, how scared, how anxious she was?
My mom then began to spout disjointed excuses.
But thanks to that, she grew up able to earn so much. It's really thanks to us. And her grandparents must not have been lonely with Clara by their side. So you should be thankful.
Grandpa sighed in dismay.
You still don't understand what you did. When you found out you were pregnant, we told you to stop drinking and smoking for the baby's sake, but you didn't listen. Even after Clara was born, you were always drowning in alcohol and cigarettes. When we went to see Clara and hugged her, she even smelled like cigarettes because you smoked in front of Clara.
Whenever my mom moved, the smell of cigarettes followed, bringing back memories of my childhood home. The red curtains fluttered, and with the wind came the smell of my mom's cigarettes. Turning around, I saw the glowing tip of her cigarette brighten with each breath she took. As I tried to walk, there were cans and bottles of alcohol at my feet, and I tripped and fell. The pink carpet gradually turned red as the spilled liquor spread from the fallen bottle, looking like a sea of blood. When the alcohol spilled, my mom's eyes widened and became bloodshot, and she angrily threw a can at me. My dad was indifferent, even when I was hit with the can or when he grabbed my hair. He sat in the dimly lit living room, piling more cigarette butts on an already heaping ashtray. Behind him, gray smoke billowed. Occasionally, ashes fell from the teetering butts in the ashtray. As these memories resurfaced, the clear image of my parents made me nauseous.
What's the big deal? There are plenty of people who smoke and drink. Why are you singling me out?
My mom protested.
That's true. There are many out there. However, you often neglected Clara because you were drunk. You wouldn't notice when she fell because you were asleep, and many times you didn't feed her when she was hungry. Clara was always covered in bruises, and it was so bad that the neighbors were worried and even called the authorities. Remember how you had to move because the rumors spread and you couldn't live there anymore?
Unable to find words to argue back, my mom became defensive.
Just let me in the house. It's ridiculous to have this conversation standing outside without even seeing your face.
She demanded to be let inside from the entrance. At that moment, a police officer appeared from behind.
What's going on here? We received a report of a suspicious person and arguing voices from a resident here.
It seemed a resident had watched from behind and called after seeing my mom pressing the doorbell repeatedly.
It's just a family dispute. We're fine.
My grandpa said.
We're being harassed for money. Please take her away.
The police officer seemed unsure of how to handle the situation. My mom would not back down until I gave her money. In that case, thinking that my elderly grandparents might also be in danger, I mentioned it to the police officers as well. We're being extorted for money.
I am her mother.
My mom exclaimed loudly. Indeed, you are my biological mother, but the parent-child relationship broke down when you abandoned me 30 years ago. We told her to go home because it would disturb other residents. Remaining calm, I explained, but my mom, unable to contain her anger, yelled in front of the police officer.
This ungrateful daughter, you should be thankful just for being born. And I can't believe someone like you lives here. I won't hold back if you come out.
My mom became increasingly violent, kicking the automatic doors of the entrance. Watching her rampage, the officer stepped in, while my dad muttered softly, "Give me a break."
Please calm down. Let's go to the station.
I watched as the police officer took my rampaging mom away. Behind my mom, who was being led away by the police, my dad looked much smaller than before as he walked helplessly, his shoulders hunched and his hands fidgeting. Later, I received a call from the police about my parents' situation. After abandoning me, my parents had tried to start an online store, but it ended in a major failure since my dad had only ever worked office jobs and my mom despised working. Consequently, they accumulated a substantial amount of debt and tried to get financial help from me, their daughter. Initially, they were just warned by the police, but soon they came back. They kept watch over us all night in the park across from our high-rise apartment where we live.
I've been waiting all night. Let me in. I'll leave if you give me money.
There were times when I received letters. Pay up. Put money into this account. Don't forget the favor of being born. The truth is, you're worthless, and such. Soon after, there were repeated coercive demands, including signing as a joint guarantor for the debt, so I consulted with an acquaintance who was a lawyer. It was mentioned that we could file a lawsuit based on threats and emotional abuse. I had the lawyer create an official document addressed to my parents. The content of the letter stated that if the 2 points of never approach our family again and do not demand money were not adhered to, legal action would be taken and compensation would be sought. I wasn't interested in compensation. I just wanted to distance myself from my parents as quickly as possible. That's why I included the statement. There is a possibility of seeking compensation. This approach proved effective with my cash-strapped parents as they stopped coming to our high-rise apartment. I was able to focus on my work with peace of mind. As a writer with a unique perspective shaped by my disability and my parents' treatment, I have been successful in children's literature. Above all, the immense love I received from my grandparents serves as a significant inspiration for me as a writer of children's literature. It provides a rich source of warmth and tenderness that I aim to convey to children through my work. My children's literature is breaking new ground and has become a hot topic recently. As a result, I've been occasionally invited to appear in the media as Clara, and the opportunities to make appearances and show my face have increased. Personally, I don't use social media, but in recent years, social media platforms have been revealing famous people's pasts seemingly out of nowhere. I was one of them, and despite my will, it became public knowledge that my parents had abandoned me and that I had been raised by my grandparents. While I had been able to come to terms with the past events as part of my history, it seemed that recent revelations had sparked substantial criticism towards my parents from the public, which I hadn't anticipated. My parents, burdened with a large amount of debt, worked tirelessly day and night to repay it, living a life akin to hell. However, since their workplace was local, it didn't take long for the fact that they were my parents to become widely known. The public scrutiny regarding my upbringing was significant, and my parents felt marginalized at work, where they were often viewed with suspicion and worked under a cloud of discomfort. Eventually, the employer found it difficult to keep them on into public perception and managed to push them into resignation by citing various reasons. My parents, feeling completely trapped, came to visit me again. However, I was unaware of their visit because they were stopped by the security guard at the entrance of my high-rise apartment. Like me, my parents had become quite famous to the extent that they were immediately recognized as my parents wherever they went. That's why they were stopped as soon as they were recognized. The mom apparently exclaimed, "What's wrong with a mother coming to see her daughter?" But she was promptly cut off by the security guard, who firmly stated, "There's no need to let them through." Actually, in response to the previous incident, I had informed the security company in advance that there's no need to let my parents through even if they come. This is because I want to avoid any danger to my elderly grandparents. Now, with no worries about my parents approaching, we live very securely and peacefully. Since then, my parents couldn't live in places where they were recognized, so they disappeared to lands where nobody knew them. However, cornered and stressed, they started blaming each other for their situation, leading to daily fights and verbal abuse. Rumor has it that even my dad has become addicted to cigarettes and alcohol, and both of them have ventured into gambling. With their gambling addiction spiraling out of control, they couldn't repay their debts, and they're constantly being chased by scary people. Meanwhile, I continue to quietly write novels in my high-rise apartment. In my room, I have many photos decorating the walls, memories of my grandparents. Being in this room, I feel a sense of security enveloped by the gentle smiles of my grandparents. There are countless photos of my grandparents attending school events, always there without fail. They always said, "I'm going to see Clara do her best." Their smiles were my motivation. My grandparents' smiles drive me forward. And the next book I'm going to release is a masterpiece. Inspired by my beloved grandpa. It features a hero like my grandpa, passionate and warm-hearted. Once this book is finished, I plan to go on a trip with my grandparents. The warmth of my grandparents is always at the core of my work. And when the book is completed, it's also a way to repay my grandparents. Repaying them is also a reward for me. Despite their old age, both of them are still quite active, going for walks every day and having tea parties with the neighbors. I want the three of us to continue living peacefully together for a long time to come.